It looked normal from the outside. Windows shining, children laughing, everything calm and safe. But this house remembered things. Things buried deep under the floor. Every night, it whispered its past, soft at first, then clearer, almost like it wanted to be heard. The new family tried to ignore it, told themselves it was nothing. But the whispers grew louder. They felt the air change, the lights flicker, the rooms grow colder. And soon, they realized something terrible. Once the house started talking, it never stopped. It looked normal from the outside. White walls, a quiet street, a perfect house for a family trying to start over. In 1986, Alan and Carmen Snedeker moved to Southington, Connecticut. They needed to be closer to the hospital where their oldest son, Philip, was receiving treatment for cancer. Money was tight, and the house they found felt like a blessing, big, affordable, and peaceful. But sometimes, blessings hide things you can't see. The day they moved in, the house felt strange. Still, almost like it was watching them. When Carmen went down to the basement to unpack, the air shifted. It grew colder, heavier. She opened a door and froze. Inside were old metal tables, drain pipes, and sharp, unfamiliar tools. A strange smell she couldn't quite describe hung in the air. That's when she realized. The basement had once been the embalming room of a funeral home. They laughed it off at first. I mean, people live in old buildings all the time, right? But as the days passed, small things started to happen. Lights flickered, doors closed on their own. Footsteps echoed in empty rooms. And late at night, Philip said he heard someone whispering his name from the dark. At first, Carmen didn't want to believe him. She dismissed it as the wind, or maybe just his imagination. But Philip kept insisting. He said he saw shadows move, even when no one was there. He claimed someone was standing at the foot of his bed, just staring. He even drew what he saw: a tall man with long dark hair, empty eyes, and a crooked smile. Carmen tried to ignore it. But one night, while mopping the floor, she saw something herself. She looked up and saw a shadow cross the hallway, slow, almost human, but not quite. When she called out, there was no answer. Just a soft knock on the wall, 3 times, like something was answering her back. The family began to notice more. Strange cold spots would appear and disappear. The smell of decay would come and go without reason. Objects would vanish, only to show up in the strangest places. In the basement, it always felt alive. Even during the day, the air down there was colder, heavy, and damp. The family dog absolutely refused to go down the stairs. Philip started to change. He was no longer the quiet boy they knew. He became distant, angry, and sometimes violent. He said voices were telling him what to do. He said the man from the shadows was talking to him, and that the man wanted him to hurt someone. Carmen and Alan didn't know what to think. They took him to doctors, who diagnosed him with stress, trauma, maybe even schizophrenia. They gave him medication, but it didn't stop what was happening inside the house. At night, doors would slam shut by themselves. The beds would shake. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air, but no fire could ever be found. One evening, Carmen was folding clothes when she heard heavy breathing right behind her ear. When she turned, no one was there. But the feeling of that breath, she could still feel it on her skin. The next day, she found long, deep scratches down the back of her neck. Alan suggested maybe she did it in her sleep. But Carmen knew what she felt. It wasn't a dream. Then, something started happening to Alan, too. He would wake up in the middle of the night, freezing cold and completely unable to move. He said it felt like something was pressing down on his chest, holding him down. He tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't come out. When he finally broke free, he swore he saw a shadow crawling away from the bed. The family grew terrified. They stopped sleeping. They kept the lights on all night. But even the light couldn't seem to keep the darkness out. One afternoon, Carmen went down to the basement to do laundry. The machine stopped suddenly. The air went still. Then she heard a soft voice whisper her name. She turned around slowly. A shadow moved behind her. Quick, like it had just vanished into the wall. She ran upstairs, shaking. But when she tried to tell Alan, he just said she needed rest. That night, she woke to the sound of footsteps coming up from the basement. Slow, heavy, one step after another. She waited, listening, thinking maybe it was Alan. But when the door creaked open, no one was there. Just the sound of breathing in the dark. The children began to have nightmares. They said they saw faces floating in their rooms at night and felt hands reaching out from inside the walls. Sometimes, They would wake up screaming, saying something was pulling their blankets off of them. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a trap, like something inside it wanted them to stay forever. They tried to pray. They tried to bless the rooms with holy water. But nothing changed. In fact, the activity only grew stronger, more aggressive. Carmen said she felt like something was inside her, watching her through her own eyes. Alan said he would sometimes see her talking to someone when no one else was there. Then, one evening, Carmen walked into the kitchen and found all the cabinet doors wide open. Every single one. The lights flickered, and then silence. She closed them one by one, her heart pounding. But as soon as she turned her back, they all burst open again at once. She dropped the dishes she was holding and ran. At this point, they couldn't take it anymore. They called for help. But even before that help could arrive, something shifted in the house. The basement door swung open on its own. A cold wave of air rushed through the rooms. And then, the whispering started again. Only this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was many, soft, layered, calling all of their names. The Snedekers had moved in hoping to heal their son. But the longer they stayed, the more the house seemed to change them. It wasn't just haunted. It felt aware, intelligent. And as they would soon discover, whatever lived inside that house wasn't done with them yet. They thought things couldn't get worse. They were wrong. After months of fear and sleepless nights, the Snedeker family realized they couldn't face this alone anymore. That's when Ed and Lorraine Warren came into the picture. They were already famous in the world of the paranormal, known for investigating cases like Amityville. The Snedekers hoped the Warrens could bring them peace, or at least an explanation. When the Warrens arrived, they walked through every inch of the house, every room, every hallway, every corner of the basement. They said they could feel it, a heavy energy, like the air itself didn't want them there. Lorraine claimed she sensed multiple spirits in the house, but one stood out more than the others. Something dark, something that wanted to stay. The Warrens believed the funeral home's past had left behind more than memories. They said the acts performed in the basement, preparing bodies, draining blood, handling death day after day, had attracted something evil. A spirit that fed on grief, pain, and fear. According to them, one of the mortuary workers might have even practiced dark rituals on the bodies. They said that kind of energy doesn't go away easily. It lingers. They told the family a cleansing was needed. They brought in priests. The priests carried holy water and crucifixes, whispering prayers in each room. They drew crosses on the walls, sprinkled water over the furniture, and told the family to stay strong. But as the prayers grew louder, so did the activity. The lights flickered. Doors rattled. The basement door slammed shut on its own. The Warrens claimed it was the entity fighting back. It didn't want to leave. Lorraine said she saw shadows forming along the ceiling, twisting like smoke. Ed demanded they continue. That fear only gave it more power. The priests kept praying, shouting now, until the air felt like it might break apart. Then, as quickly as it began, everything went still. The house grew silent. No flickering, no movement, no whispers. The family said they felt warmth for the first time in months. A calmness. The priests told them it was done. The evil had been cast out. For a while, life seemed normal again. The family laughed. They slept. The house felt lighter. Carmen said she could finally breathe without fear. But even then, a something deep inside her whispered that it wasn't truly over. Sometimes she'd catch a cold draft in the hallway, or feel a shadow behind her when she was alone. She told herself it was nothing. Just memory. Just nerves. Weeks passed. Then one night, she woke up to a sound she hadn't heard in months. Footsteps. Slow, steady, coming up the basement stairs. She sat up, heart racing. She could hear the handle turning. Then silence. When she checked, the basement door was locked from the inside. But no one had gone down there. The next morning, the basement light was on. Alan swore he had turned it off the night before. The family tried to move on, but the signs returned. Soft voices, cold air, flickering shadows. The difference this time was subtle. It wasn't chaos like before. It was quieter, smarter, like whatever was in the house had learned to hide. Carmen contacted the Warrens again. They told her sometimes entities don't leave completely. Sometimes they lie dormant, waiting for weakness, for attention. Lorraine told her to keep praying, to ignore the sounds, to take back control of her home. But that was easier said than done. Philip came home from the hospital. He looked better, calmer, but not the same. He told his mother the house still felt crowded. He said he could hear whispers again, though they didn't sound angry anymore, just sad. One night, he stood at the basement door for a long time, listening. When Carmen asked what he was doing, he said quietly, "They're still down there." The fear came rushing back. The old memories. The smell. The darkness. The whispers that never stopped. It was as if the house had been sleeping, and now it was awake again. Neighbors started to notice the family acting strange. The curtains were always closed. The lights stayed on all night. Carmen stopped inviting anyone over. Even the mailman said he felt uncomfortable near the property. Then, something unexpected happened. A man who had worked at the old funeral home before the Snedekers moved in came forward. He said he remembered the basement well. He said some strange things did happen there. Unexplained noises, lights turning on and off, tools moving by themselves. He said no one stayed down there longer than they needed to. The story spread fast. Paranormal investigators started showing up uninvited. Reporters tried to interview the family. Some came to believe the story completely. Others called it a hoax. But the Snedekers didn't want fame. They wanted peace. Eventually, they moved out for good. They never spoke of the house again, at least not publicly. The new owners who moved in said the place was quiet, peaceful, ordinary. But every now and then, someone passing by said they saw something. A light flickering in the basement window when the house was empty. Years later, when the story inspired a movie, critics called it Hollywood fiction. But Carmen said the film barely captured what really happened. She said what they lived through was worse, deeper, more personal, and darker than anyone could ever imagine. Whether you believe them or not, one thing is certain, something changed in that house. Something that can't be seen or touched, but still lingers in the air. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was trauma. Or maybe it was something that doesn't belong to this world. The Snedekers left Southington behind, but the story never left them. It followed them wherever they went. And even though the house looks quiet today, those who know the story say that peace can't last forever. Because if the dead can't rest, then neither can the living. The Snedekers thought leaving the house would end it all. But some things, once touched by darkness, don't let go so easily. After moving away from Southington, the family tried to rebuild their lives. They didn't talk about what happened. They didn't want to. But the silence didn't bring peace. It only made the memories louder. Carmen said that for years, she still woke up at 3 a.m. She'd feel something watching her. Not threatening. Just there. Sometimes she'd dream about the basement. The cold, the smell, the sound of the gurney wheels creaking across the floor. And every time she woke up, it felt like she had just been there again. It wasn't just a nightmare. It felt like the house still had a hold on her mind. Her son Philip tried to move on too. He battled illness, grew older, and tried to live a normal life. But he never liked talking about the house. He once said that some things you see can't be unseen, and some voices can't be forgotten. He said the house didn't just haunt them, it marked them. Sometimes, he'd pause mid-sentence, like he could still hear something in his head, something whispering from far away. The Warrens went on to tell their side of the story in interviews and books. They said the Snedeker haunting was one of the most disturbing cases they had ever faced. Lorraine described it as a dark presence that thrived on sorrow. She said she would never forget that basement. She said the walls seemed to hold emotion, grief, pain, and something else she couldn't describe. But skeptics didn't believe it. Reporters claimed the story was exaggerated. Some investigators said there was no real proof of any haunting. They accused the family of seeking attention. But the Snedekers didn't gain much from it. In fact, they lost more than they ever gained. Their peace, their home, and for a time, their sense of safety. For them, it was never about fame. It was about surviving something they couldn't explain. Years later, filmmakers adapted their story into a movie, The Haunting in Connecticut. The movie changed names and details, but the bones of the story stayed the same. Carmen said she agreed to the movie because she wanted people to understand what her family went through. But she admitted, no film could ever show the real fear. She said the nights were worse than the movie made them look, and that no camera could capture the feeling of something you can't see breathing beside you. The release of the movie brought their story back into the spotlight. Old questions resurfaced. Paranormal researchers revisited the case, digging through archives, interviews, and property records. Some found documents proving the home really had been a funeral parlor. Others found testimonies from neighbors who recalled strange events long before the Snedekers ever arrived. Doors that slammed on their own, flickering lights, and the smell of burning candles when no one was inside. Still, others believed the family's trauma had created the haunting, that the energy of pain and fear could manifest into something that felt real. A psychologist who studied the case later said, "When a family experiences extreme emotional stress, reality can bend in terrifying ways." But even she admitted some things didn't make sense. How did so many visitors experience the same cold spots, the same shadows, the same dread in the same places? The media attention reopened old wounds. People visited the old house again. Some claimed they could feel strange energy around it. Others said it was completely normal. The current owners, whoever they were, stayed quiet. They didn't want attention, and they didn't want cameras. The curtains stayed closed, and no one really knew what went on inside. Locals still walk past that house and cross to the other side of the street, just in case. Carmen later spoke about forgiveness. She said she no longer hated the house. That maybe, whatever lived there, was trapped, confused, not evil. She said she prayed for it to find peace, just as her family had tried to. But even with that forgiveness, she admitted she could never go back. She said the air in that place had changed her forever. Once you've lived with darkness, she said, you never forget what it feels like. Over time, the story faded from headlines, but not from people's curiosity. Every few years, paranormal researchers would bring it up again. The Snedeker haunting, the funeral home, the basement that whispered. They'd debate whether it was real or just a mix of grief and imagination. But no one could explain everything. Not the sounds, not the shadows, not the fear that lingered even after the family left. Some who studied the case said the house wasn't haunted at all. They said it was the trauma, Philip's illness, the stress, the emotional pain that caused hallucinations. Others disagreed. They said too many details lined up. Too many witnesses felt the same chill in the same rooms. Too many people left that house believing in something they never believed in before. A few local historians even uncovered records of the original funeral homeowner. There were rumors that he experimented with preserving bodies using unauthorized chemicals, that some remains were buried improperly, and that certain rituals were conducted without consent. None of it was ever proven, but it added another layer to the mystery, one that still keeps people talking. Carmen once said that even if no one believed her, she knew what she saw. She said, "You can't explain away everything. Some things are just beyond what we understand." And perhaps that's what keeps the story alive. The space between what can be proven and what can only be felt. Today, the house still stands quietly on Meriden Avenue. Fresh paint, new owners, normal life. Children play in the yard, cars pass by, and nothing seems out of place. But if you look closely at the basement window, especially at night, some locals say you might notice a faint light flickering, just for a second, before it disappears again. A few visitors have claimed that when they walked by at dusk, they felt a sudden chill, like the air had shifted. Others said they heard what sounded like soft humming, coming from beneath the house. It could be the pipes, the wind, or maybe something that never truly left. And sometimes, when the wind moves just right, it almost sounds like something breathing, waiting, watching, silent, but never gone. Some stories fade with time, but not this one. The Snedeker haunting still echoes, not through screams or shadows, but through questions no one can answer. What really happened in that house on Meriden Avenue? Was it grief that shaped the darkness, or something much older that simply waited for someone to notice it again? Maybe both. Maybe the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. People who lived nearby say the town feels different now, calmer. But every once in a while, on a quiet night, someone walking past swears they can still feel that same weight in the air. A strange heaviness, as if the ground remembers. And maybe that's the real haunting. Not the sounds, not the shadows, but the memory of fear itself, the kind that never truly dies. If there's one thing the Snedeker story teaches us, it's that some houses don't just hold people. They hold energy, emotion, and sometimes they hold on to the things we're not ready to face. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, this story reminds us that real horror doesn't always come from monsters in the dark. Sometimes it comes from what we can't explain, from the moments that twist logic into silence. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. If this story left you curious, there's more where this came from. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell. Like, comment, and share your thoughts. Do you think the Snedekers were truly haunted, or was something else happening inside that house? Because next time, we re-going even deeper into another real-life haunting that may change everything you believe about what's waiting in the dark. Until then, keep your lights on and listen closely. Sometimes, the quietest places have the loudest stories.